I've got a few keto holiday recipes that are total hits, a couple that didn't quite make the cut, and one recipe that I found online that is so bad that I just had to warn you because somehow it has perfect reviews from over 400 people. So let's dive in to see which of these recipes deserves a spot on your Thanksgiving table and which belongs in the trash. First, I want to share my winning keto pumpkin pie recipe. If you miss old-fashioned pumpkin pie, just like your grandma used to make with that flaky pie crust, then you must try this recipe. The recipe starts with the best keto pie crust that you will ever make. I was recently looking at comments from my keto pie crust video and was floored by how many of you guys made the recipe and loved it. Start by adding 1 cup of almond flour to a food processor, then 3 tablespoons of coconut flour, a teaspoon of xanthan gum, and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Then add 1/2 cup of unsalted butter. This is cubed butter that I have frozen for around 15 minutes. The secret to flaky keto pie crust is to get your butter as cold as possible so that it creates those flaky air pockets as it bakes. You'll also need 1 ounce of softened cream cheese, an egg, and 1.5 teaspoons of rice vinegar, white vinegar, or apple cider vinegar. Pulse that together just until the crust comes together. You don't want to overmix or manipulate the crust too much because it's going to start to melt that butter and you want it to have those chunks of butter within the crust. Remember, that's the key to making your crust super flaky. Next, roll it out between 2 sheets of parchment paper, and you can store it like this if you're making crust ahead of time, or if you're ready to make pie right now, you can just roll it out a few inches past the pie plate and then place it into your pie plate. If at any point your crust is getting too sticky or hard to peel off the parchment paper, that means that your butter is starting to melt, so just replace the parchment paper and put that crust back in the refrigerator to chill for around 10 minutes. This will help stiffen up the butter again. Another thing I love about this pie crust recipe is that you can easily cut out crust if you want to make lattice or any sort of decorative elements to go on top of your pie. It works just like traditional pie crust. For the pumpkin pie filling part, get out your second food processor from the cupboard. Oh, you don't have a second food processor? You don't have 11 waffle makers, 4 air fryers, 2 blenders, and 3 food processors like I do? I know I'm a little neurotic when it comes to kitchen appliances. Well, I guess you better pause the video and get to doing some dishes. And while you do that, I'm gonna have a cereal break. Now, I usually don't keep cereal around my house because honestly, it's just empty calories. And when you do eat it, you're hungry like 5 minutes later. But there is one cereal that I don't mind keeping around the house, and that's Magic Spoon cereal. Magic Spoon cereal has around 13 to 14 grams of protein per serving and 4 to 5 net grams of carbs per serving. It's fueling, high protein, and the taste, it's straight up nostalgic. Like the cereals we grew up on, but this one is a grown-up version because it's gonna keep me full with all of that protein. Since you're still probably washing out that food processor, let me tell you about the line of treats that they have. These things are lifesavers when I'm on the go. Each bar has 11 to 12 grams of protein, just 1 gram of sugar, and they're crispy and crunchy. Between the cereals and the treat bars, you've got multiple flavors to choose from. So you'll never get bored and you're gonna wanna try them all. If you wanna try them, use my code KetoFocus5 or click on the link in the description box to get $5 off of your order. You can also find Magic Spoon on Amazon or at your local grocery store. And the best part, they back everything with a 100% happiness guarantee. So if you don't like it for any reason, they're gonna refund you, no questions asked. So click the link in the description box or scan this QR code to grab your Magic Spoon today and save $5 with my code. Okay, now that you're done cleaning your food processor, add 1 3/4 cups of pumpkin puree to that. You could roast your own pumpkin like I'm doing here and then just puree it in a food processor, but that would mean that you probably have to wash your food processor for a 3rd time. So canned pumpkin is okay. I won't put you through that much work. Then add in 3 eggs, 1 cup of heavy cream, 1/2 cup of brown sugar-free sweetener, and 2 tablespoons of your favorite bourbon whiskey. This is optional, but some days I'm barely holding on by a thread and need a shot of whiskey in my pie just to see me through. I'm just kidding. I just added in there for flavor. The alcohol will bake out. At least I think it does. Plus, I don't do shots anymore. Those days are long gone, thank goodness. Then add in your seasonings. It's 2 teaspoons of ground ginger, 1.5 teaspoons of ground cinnamon, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg. Puree that until smooth. And actually, come to think of it, you probably could have just mixed this with an electric mixer. Sorry, guys. Then pour this into the chilled pie crust and bake in a 325-degree oven for around 50 to 60 minutes or until your pie is just slightly wobbly in the center. Then you're gonna let it cool for around 15 minutes before transferring it to the refrigerator to let it set further. If you're wondering why my pie crust looks a little bit different here, it's because I realized I never filmed an updated version of my flaky keto pie crust along with this recipe for the pumpkin pie filling. But just know I've made this combination together several times. I've just never filmed it. I need to get on that. I'm gonna add that to my list to do. Another keto recipe that is very popular during the holidays is mashed cauliflower. It's supposed to replace mashed potatoes, and it's something that I've made over the years several times, but to be honest, it doesn't quite replace potatoes for me. Even though I'll do stuff like try and cook out all the moisture from the cauliflower so it doesn't taste like cauliflower, and then add in a bunch of cream cheese, it still just doesn't taste like mashed potatoes. So mashed cauliflower is a bit of a miss for me. And instead, I have been making mashed turnips. And it's the closest recipe I have found that tastes like actual mashed potatoes. I think a lot of it has to do with how I prepare the turnips and what I add to them. See, I boil them in some chicken broth with a half of a potato. You don't end up eating the potato, so don't worry. It's actually there to help like soak up some of that bitterness from the turnips. I don't know, it works. And then there's a couple other things I do to the turnips, like I cook all the moisture off after I've boiled them. But you can watch my turnip video if you're interested in learning more about exactly what I do and why I do it. Then I add my cooked turnips to my food processor. Do you see why I have multiple food processors? I hate doing dishes, but a blender works too though. Then add in 3 tablespoons of butter, a 1/4 cup of heavy cream, and a 1/4 teaspoon of pepper. And then season it with salt to taste. It's so creamy, it turns out tasting like mashed potatoes, and it's so much better than cauliflower. Another popular holiday side dish that I thought I would make keto is sweet potatoes. To be honest, I didn't come up with this idea on my own. ChatGPT suggested it when I was looking for holiday content gaps on my website, but it suggested I make a recipe for keto sweet potatoes using cauliflower and pumpkin. I thought it was hallucinating again, but I thought I would give it a whirl. And actually, I looked it up. There's several other keto recipe bloggers out there that have done this combo together. So I grabbed my skillet and a bag of frozen cauliflower rice, and I used my method for getting that cauliflower stink out of cauliflower, which is where you just dry cook it on a nonstick skillet. You basically cook the frozen cauliflower rice over medium heat until all the moisture is out of it, and it starts to just kind of stick to the bottom of the pan, and it's fluffy. This works so well at getting your cauliflower not to taste like cauliflower. And when you add this along with a cup of pumpkin puree, 3 tablespoons of unsalted butter, 3 ounces of cream cheese, 2 large eggs, 2 tablespoons of heavy whipping cream, 3 tablespoons of brown sugar-free sweetener, a 1/2 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, and a 1/4 teaspoon of ground nutmeg. And then you pour that into a casserole dish that you've greased with butter. And then you mix up a pecan topping that consists of a 1/3 cup of crushed pecans, 2 tablespoons of unsalted butter that's melted, 1 tablespoon of brown sugar-free sweetener, and a 1/2 teaspoon of ground cinnamon. That was a lot, I know. It's gonna taste just like a sweet potato casserole after you bake it in a 350-degree Fahrenheit oven for around 25 to 30 minutes. I also like to pop mine under the broiler for around 1 to 2 minutes afterwards. It just kind of gets it kind of crispier on top. Those nuts get a little brown. But this turned out surprisingly good. It's the perfect hint of sweetness paired with those earthy flavors of the pumpkin and the cauliflower. So it's a definite win and a must try this holiday season. Now onto the recipe that I'm not sure how it's even recommended by Google. When I was researching for this video, I Googled keto Thanksgiving recipes, and one of the first posts that popped up was a collection of 40 keto Thanksgiving recipes that was featured on Women's Health magazine. I mean, I knew the article was probably a little rubbish when the first 2 recipes I saw contained sweet potato and butternut squash, which are really too high in carbs to be considered keto. But one of the recipes also caught my eye, not because it looked good, actually it did look good, but I knew that there was no way it would taste good. It was a recipe for coconut flour biscuits. So I decided to make it. It uses coconut flour for 2/3 a cup that you sift with 2 teaspoons of baking powder. And I am not a big fan of coconut flour. That's why I rarely use it. I mean, it's a good option if you have a nut allergy, but that flavor can be very overpowering. And if that coconut flour didn't quite seal the deal for you in terms of coconut flour flavor, this recipe says to use a 1/2 cup of coconut oil that's melted along with 8 eggs. That's a lot of eggs. 8 eggs. It also gives the option of adding in a 1/2 cup of shredded cheddar cheese, which I decided to add since this recipe is going to need all the help it can get at masking that eggy coconut flavor. Because if you're like me and have been baking low carb recipes for years, you just know when something isn't going to taste good or turn out right. But like I said, I decided to give this recipe a try because after all, it had 5 out of 5 stars from over 420 people and was featured in Women's Health magazine. After I scooped them out and flattened them like the recipe said to do, I baked them in the oven at 370 degrees Fahrenheit for 30 minutes, and my whole house ended up smelling like coconut flour. I pulled them out of the oven and broke into them. First of all, these are very flat looking biscuits. They look nothing like the photo, and I followed that recipe to a T. But let's try them. It tastes like a coconut flour omelet. My friends, we can do much better. Now, if you're dairy-free or nut-free, this might be a good option for you. Might be your only option, although I'm sure I could probably come up with a better recipe. But if you're looking for low-carb rolls to go on your holiday table this season, one that tastes like an actual roll and has a nearly 5-star review from over 100 legitimate reviewers, then you must try this roll recipe right here. And don't forget to stock up on Magic Spoon. Click the link in the description and get your Magic Spoon today and get $5 off with my code KetoFocus5.